Maybe your own family, somebody else's, or maybe a fictional family like the Ricardos, the Bradys, or the Huxtables. Whoever you like, just a perfect family picture. You got it? One of my most memorable family pictures was, shall we say, a little ways from perfection. I was about 15 at the time, and my entire family, that's 7 of us total, we all piled into the studio for a church directory photo. My dad, with his unsmiling, stern look, it was probably more just because that's what he always did in front of the camera, and not because he hadn't been inside a church in years and was only there because he was forced to. My youngest sister, a baby, folded over like a sandwich because she couldn't sit up yet. My brothers eyeing each other rather than the camera because they wanted to make sure that they were the instigator and not the target of any actions between them. My sister looking, well, normal. She's really the most normal one of the bunch. Me, mouthful of braces and a face full of acne, wishing I was anywhere except near a camera. And my mother, jaws clenched but beaming with a smile like it was the most perfect scene in the whole world. This would fit right in on a website that actually collects this sort of thing, awkwardfamilyphotos.com.
Yes.
They collect just that, awkward and generally hilarious family and group photographs. The photos there show raw moments, extremely dated clothing and hairstyles, and others that are just plain weird for some reason or another. The ones I really like are these seemingly normal ones, but really not normal at all, just like my family's. I'm guessing that many of the pictures that we thought of just a moment ago matched up with these idyllic images of families. Idyllic, but ultimately myths when you actually start to build them of real folks. That's what I like about seeing these awkward family photos. A lot of them are awkward because of how they diverge from these mythical ideals and remind us how unrealistic our myths really are. We have some mythical ideals about communities, too. Quaker theologian Parker Palmer has quite a bit to say about community, about finding true communities that really work, an admirable goal of not only Quakers, but really of all religious traditions. One of the most pervasive of our myths comes from when we look at communities in terms of individuals and what we get out of it, a consumerist type of mentality. I'm definitely not immune to this one. As I was evaluating what seminaries to apply for my graduate degree in ministry, this consumerist mentality was entirely the frame that I was looking through. What were the benefits I get out of the program? What features did it have to offer me? How did the staff at the school treat me? Did I like the other students that I met? Now, I'm not saying this is the wrong way to look at whether or not to choose a school to attend, but it probably contributed to my surprise when I got there and realized that this community thing was there too, and that a lot of effort went into building it. Since I was living on the other side of the bay in San Francisco, and I didn't really make being an active part of the community a priority, I never did really connect with it, even when they tried to elect me as student officer one year. The community in the school remained mostly a consumer mentality for me, but there definitely was community there, and it baffled me how connected other folks got with it. Community isn't just something that one subscribes to, boiled down to a list of rights and benefits for being there. Parker Palmer likes to remind us of this. He likes to remind us that true community comes as a byproduct of commitment and struggle. He goes on to say, it's not an accident that the most impressive sense of community is found among people in the midst of such joyful travail, among blacks, among women, among all who've said no to tyranny and yes to their lives together. Shared struggle, shared triumphs, and shared failures, these build community more than anything else. But even with this in mind, it's still probably the hardest myth to challenge. How much of our capitalistic society is built around the individual and individual's needs? And how much of this is ingrained in the way that we think, keeping our focus on how to best get one's needs met? And not just the basic needs like food, water, and shelter, but all the way up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I sometimes think I end up on the extreme side of this myself. You should see some of the comparison charts when I'm deciding between options. It's just so easy to only keep one's own perspective in mind. Now, just in case you're trying to think ahead of me and thinking I'm going to say it's the group needs above the individual, I'm not going there either. In a true community, as Parker Palmer describes them, the individual doesn't supersede the group, but likewise the group doesn't supersede the individual either. The needs of both are just important, and as he says, they both have access to truth. They balance each other. In a well-functioning community, the group helps to balance the needs and egos of its members. A rather useful part of being in community, I think. But also, the voices of individuals and the contributions of individuals help to complement and challenge the group. A diversity of voices and a diversity of opinions make a group and a community stronger, and every decision even better. The University of Virginia did some studies on dissenting voices on juries. They found that a single dissenting voice, someone with the courage to speak up and challenge the prevailing opinion, that single diverse voice resulted in more information being considered and a greater number of perspectives being brought into the room. And that's just in an isolated group, a jury, just together for a short period of time. Communities are far longer lasting than even that, growing and learning and changing over time. Communities are stronger because of their individual members, and communities grow stronger by going through struggles and challenges together. Now, we've got some other myths we face too. Another particularly pervasive one is the idea of a true community as some kind of utopia. Just like we built up that perfect family photograph, if we were to imagine what a perfect community would look like, I bet we'd have a number of utopian features in it. Ideal, but ultimately unrealistic. I've probably spent more than an acceptable amount of time looking into intentional communities, reading books and websites about them, okay, even reading their organizational documents too. I even lived in one for about 3 months during one summer as a college student. So when I heard of a universalist intentional community back in the 1800s, I was a bit more excited than the average you should have been. So this was the community of Hopedale. It was founded in Massachusetts in 1842 by Aidan Ballou, who was nephew of the well-known Universalist minister and theologian, Hosea Ballou. This community was revolutionary in many ways. Property was held jointly, labor was shared between all genders, and women's rights were emphasized. All women, 1842, all women had the right to vote in the community, and some even held leadership roles. The most notable thing about this community was its philosophy of nonviolence, a philosophy that was directly influenced Aidan Ballou to Tolstoy, who influenced Gandhi, who influenced Dr. King. How's that for a philosophical genealogy for us? The problem was that this community ultimately wasn't sustainable. In fact, it only lasted 14 years before it went under as some of its initial financial backers backed out. For all its lofty ideals, it just wasn't a realistically sustainable model. I admit that I have an overly romantic view and utopian view of communities. You've heard about it from time to time. But there are some very real dangers inherent in that. If we come to a particular community with idealistic assumptions about what the community will do or will be, particularly for experiencing these things when we come into it, then we can be crushed the first time it lets us down. This can lead to disillusionment and can destroy our relationship with community in the first place. Just imagine when a community hasn't met a particular expectation that you had. I imagine you were disappointed. But if you had truly believed that this was what the community should do and nothing else was possible, it could have been devastating. It was hard to hear the fate of Hopedale. It sounded like such a neat community with awesome ideals, the relationship, the equity, the cooperation. It should have been a great model, right? Hearing about their faith disillusions me about the feasibility of their entire idea. It doesn't need to be the case, but my attachment to the myth makes it that way. And there's another part of this utopian myth that can seep its way into thinking about how communities are and how we might be for them. The danger with these utopian dreams is imagining our own ideal community as filled with people just like oneself. A community is an expansion of ourselves. I admit there's something oddly attractive about this. By finding a group of people just like me, who like what I talk about, what I like to talk about, it's attractive and completely terrifying at the same time. What a limited group we'd be, with only our own limited view of reality. It takes diversity, a lot more diversity, to make a community that really works. In fact, the moment I start to imagine a community of people just like me, the image shatters when my imagination gets to our first group meeting, and I realize how utterly ridiculous the notion is. It can still be a rather pervasive myth, though, that might stick with us, even if we're not aware of it. I have a really fancy, highly technical name for the last myth I want to talk about. It's called the "we figured out what's working now and expect it'll work tomorrow too" myth. This myth is a dangerous one, the most dangerous out of those I've raised today. Particularly hazardous to the survival of functioning communities. Or maybe they aren't so healthy if this myth is functioning. We figured it out now and it'll still work tomorrow too. Ever heard of Raquel, Poland? I'm guessing you probably haven't. It was founded in the mid-16th century by a Polish nobleman as a center for religious tolerance, and Unitarianism thrived there, for a while at least. It was actually a real hotbed of forward thinking. It had a well-known printing press, published a good amount of Unitarian educational materials. They published what's known as the Racovian Catechism. It was a published non-Trinitarian statement of faith, which is pretty radical for the 16th century. But forward-thinking as they were, what happened is that they failed to pay attention to what was happening around them. As the Counter-Reformation grew in Europe, the challenges against the tolerance that was in Raquel grew. The tipping point came when two boys in Raquel allegedly threw rocks at a group of crosses that had been erected right next to town by the Counter-Reformationists. Unitarians in Raquel and the rest of Poland were entirely wiped out. Aside from a few surviving publications from the press, there are no remnants today. The press is the only reason we even know about them. Of all the myths about communities, this is the one that worries me the most today. What might we be missing? What might we be holding on to that's not going to keep working tomorrow? It's no secret that church membership and church attendance are declining all over the place. The number of folks unaffiliated with a religious tradition of any sort is increasing, and church memberships decreasing. 1/3 of adults under the age of 30 claim no religious affiliation of any sort. And only 2 in 10 millennials believe that church going is important. 2 in 10. But even more than that, though, if you look at all American adults, 20% of them currently give their religious affiliation as none. And that's up from just 10% 7 years ago. Changes to the religious landscape and religious needs are all around us. I'm afraid we'll miss it if if we spend too much time and energy on only what works today. I don't have to look much farther than my own family to confirm these numbers, the one I described in that awkward family photograph. I have 5 of us kids, 5 of us, all of us raised going to church every week, all of us raised with the importance of being religious and being in church. Out of the 5, you know how many has any religious affiliation today? 1. The rest would certainly call themselves none. The world is changing, and institutions are often slow to catch up. We have a few more myths in particular that make the rounds around here. Myths about numbers, myths about having enough, myths about being enough, myths about great things that used to work, myths about things we should be doing, things we shouldn't. Some of these things are indeed great ideas and traditions, but some of them are myths, and the difference isn't always an obvious one. There's nothing wrong with us because we don't line up with our myths, that we aren't exactly what we think we should be. Our challenge is to see the myths for what they are, to see them, to name them, to not let them limit our thinking. True community isn't only possible, true community is already here. We've been building it for nearly 150 years. That's a lot of work. But true community doesn't mean a perfect one. As Layla Ibrahim from the Oakland UU congregation reminded us, there really is only one choice between imperfect community and no community. Again and again, we are called to choose to commit ourselves to building a more just, more diverse, and yet ever messy and imperfect, beloved community. I don't know about you, but I'll choose messy and imperfect every single time. May we all notice our myths and also find the love that we need to keep building our imperfect, beloved communities. May it be so. Our messy communities aren't always easy, but love is one of the things that can get us there. Let's sing now about that love. Number 131 in the great hymnal, Love Will Guide Us.